women's demands in these uprisings, like those of men, have been for political freedoms and social justice, not for women's rights. However, some commentators have hoped that the large participation of women in the uprisings will lead to improved rights for women. They have been alarmed that instead women's rights now seem to be challenged or undermined. In particular, there has been discussion and debate around cancelling the women's quota, that has now been cancelled, and repealing the Fuller Law. And these two measures, I should say, they have been, I think, in the public mind, greatly associated with Susan Mubarak, and of course her National Council for Women. Against this backdrop, women's rights have largely been discredited, and women's rights activists face a significant challenge in improving the image and credibility of women's rights as an issue within Egypt. I think there are dangers, though, about this discourse that somehow women's agency in the revolution has not led to an outcome of women's rights. I think that the dangers, though, of falling into Orientalist traps about the oppression of women by their men in the Orient because of some eternal nature of the Orient itself. My paper is an attempt to go beyond this polarisation and to look at the shaping of women's rights in the aftermath of dictatorship, not as a question of the persistence or not of Oriental patriarchy, but rather I want to look at the disconnect between societal expectations or constructions of what are considered proper gender roles and relations and people's actual lived experiences under neoliberal authoritarianism. And I use the term neoliberal authoritarianism to refer to the reproduction of authoritarianism for the purpose of implementing neoliberal economic reforms, which is a type of political economy, I think, that has characterised the majority of Arab countries since the 1990s. An impassioned plea by a young Egyptian woman called Asma Mahfouz, which went viral on YouTube at the beginning of 2011, is often claimed to have persuaded Egyptians to go to the streets. Obviously, I'm not saying that her YouTube clip is what persuaded people to go to the streets, but it's often this YouTube clip is circulated a lot on Facebook, etc. In the video she said, I quote from what she says in her YouTube clip, "If you think yourself a man, come with me on the 25th of January. Whoever says that women should not go to protests because they will get beaten, let him have some honour and manhood and come with me on January 25th. In challenging, close quotes, in challenging Egypt's men to join her in demonstrations, Mahfouz provides an implicit critique of the state of gender under Hosni Mubarak's regime, suggesting that men have become like women, fearing being beaten, whilst women, like Mahfouz, have become like men, courageously facing up to police brutality. Debates over women's rights in the aftermath of Mubarak must be understood against this backdrop of decades of what I term perceived reversal of expected gender roles, what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. This crisis of gender experienced under Mubarak's rule is, I argue, linked to the crisis of social reproduction which occurred under neoliberal authoritarianism. Okay, the term social reproduction I take from the work of Isabella Baca, a feminist economist. It refers to the biological reproduction of labour power and social practices connected to caring, socialisation and fulfilment of human needs. So this is obviously something that is important when it comes to construction and regulation of gender roles relations and identities. Because it's so linked to the family, social reproduction is so linked to the family. In Egypt, changes to the political economy after 1991 have created a crisis of social reproduction for the majority of Egyptians. And this is because, social reproduction is dependent upon, as well as being a critical pillar of political economy. So there's a dialectical relationship between social reproduction and political economy. And I think that it's very important to understand this crisis of social reproduction when you consider social reproduction under previous periods of Egypt's political economy. So in the post-independence period, starting with the period under Gamal Abdel Nasser, where we have import substitution industrialization, and then moving on to the period of Infitah of Sadat, and then from early 1990s, the introduction of neoliberal economic reforms. Just briefly, I think under Gamal Abdel Nasser, there was very much a political economy of social reproduction in which women were encouraged to enter an expanding workforce of public sector enterprises and state bureaucracy as a signal of the regime's modernity, its modernisation programme. It's very much similar to the Tunisian case. The state implemented a number of reforms which many commentators have termed state feminism.